Hello, my friends. The following is going to sound to some of you certifiably insane. And I'm sorry. I would ask for a grace and some understanding. Let me explain. Back in 2020, a lot of things changed for us, for Bridgie and I. We started to see, I guess you might say, more evidence of the supernatural. We had this sort of encounter in the summer of 2020 where we both started praying in a language we didn't understand. We started to see more physical healings. I keep a track on a spreadsheet now. It's so common. We see about one a month. I think we've seen 60 in the last 5 years. I've participated in more than 24 deliverance sessions. Deliverance is another word for exorcism. Again, I know how crazy that sounds, but demons do exist. I've interacted with them. And then Bridget started to see dreams and visions that seemed prophetic. And it wasn't just her. Other people we know, it's the same kind of thing. In fact, the story all kind of kicks off after that 2020 experience in January of 21. A friend of mine named Corey had this encounter where he claims to have met Jesus, and he showed him like this half an hour of this weird apocalyptic symbolic scene that he still doesn't really know what it means. But afterwards, he had this phrase in his head that he couldn't get rid of. And he went to a men's conference in 2019, April of 19, and he couldn't get the phrase Jacob and his two wives out of his head. Jacob and his two wives, Jacob and his two wives. And he goes to this conference, and at lunch, somebody comes up to him at the table and said, "Hey, I feel like I'm supposed to tell you Jacob and his two wives. Does that mean anything to you?" And he was floored. And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know what it means, but I can't get this phrase out of my head." Another person said the same thing. Came up to him and said, "I feel like I'm supposed to tell you Jacob and his two wives." And now he's sort of freaked out. And I guess his redux from the whole thing is that Jacob, if you read the story in Genesis, worked for each wife 7 years, 7 years each. You add them together, it's 14 years. 14 years from 2019, he surmised, was when the Lord was returning. And depending on the starting point, it was either 2033 or 2032. But he thinks that's going to be the second coming of Christ in one of those years. And there's a sort of interesting symmetry, because if Jesus died in 32 or 33, the date is still debated. It would be exactly 2,000 years since he left. So I sort of just like listened and kind of kept it in mind, but didn't really change a whole lot based on this. But it's sort of like was the first time I was thinking, wow, I wonder if, I don't have many decades in front of me. I'm not going to live to my actuarial life expectancy or something. And I wonder if we only have 5, 10, 12 years in this world. But anyway, carried on. And then later that year, Bridget started to have these dreams and visions. And so the first vision, this is in 2021, was a picture of a wheat field like this, which for some reason the sky was dark. I'm not sure why. And it was like ready for harvest. Subsequent to that, she had a vision of that same wheat field, but mostly harvested except for one section. Again, I'm not sure why the sky was dark. Then coming into 2022, she had a vision of the wheat field completely harvested, and that one section that was left taken up to the sky, bound in a red ribbon. And then by the time we get to 2024 in February, she had a vision of a sky with a message written in the clouds that said, "I am coming." So then, just about a month ago, I see this.
I used to think that I was going to grow up and become an old man as a Christian, maybe pass away in my 90s. But what happened in 2018 First thing, in a vision, in a dream, God spoke in a voice, in a loud voice. He said to me, no man, he said to me, there will be no men's World Cup in 2026. He said in a loud voice. I didn't see him, but I heard his voice. He said there will be no World Cup in 2026. He said because life will not be business as usual on earth. This is what he said.
And then 2026, coming up World Cup, right? Which is the United States.
Which is supposed to be in the United States, yes. So me, I'm not a soccer fan, and I did not know when maybe the last or the next coming World Cup will be, because I don't follow soccer, I'm not a fan. But then I researched 2026, is there going to be a World Cup? I'm awake now, so I'm researching. And then I found out yes, it's going to be the World Cup 2026 in the United States. Okay, fast forward, still 2018. One early morning, I wake up, switch the light on, and very early morning, then I'm reading my Bible. And while I'm reading my Bible, Jesus appears, not in a dream, I'm awake. Jesus appears in front of me. So I'm looking at him face to face. He's wearing a white robe. And then this is what he says with it. And by the way, mind you, I didn't know much about what he was telling me, the topic that he was going to talk about. He said to me, from the time Israel became a nation, this is Jesus talking. From the time Israel became a nation in 1948, there will be 77 years to the Exodus. He doesn't use the word rapture. He uses the word Exodus. He says, I knew he was talking about the rapture. And then he says, on the Feast of Trumpets of the 23rd and the 24th of September 2025, I will come to take my church. And then he says, in these 2 days, no one knows the day or the hour I will come.
So and then he says, September, yes. What September?
The 23rd and the 24th. It's like a feast of, yes, the Feast of Trumpets is actually a 2-day celebration, if I may say. It's actually, it falls on one of these 2 days, let me put it that way.
So the rapture would happen either on any of those dates? Is that what he was saying?
That's what he was saying. He said, in these 2 days, no one knows the day or hour I will come. And then he said, then there will be a 7-year tribulation on earth. And then he said, then on the 15th of September, on the Day of Atonement, that's a feast. On the Day of Atonement, on the 15th of September 2032, will be my second coming to earth as king. After saying these words, sorry?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
After saying these words, he disappeared. And I was left amazed.
For those unfamiliar with the concept, this guy's describing the rapture is this concept where at some point God takes the church out of the world. And then there's a 7-year period that is usually divided in half, the last half of which is called the Great Tribulation, in which it's supposed to be this eschatological scenario where God pours out his wrath on the earth. To be honest, this is not really something I look into very much. It's not really something I'm interested in. There was a time in my late 20s when I was, but it's just not really on my radar. And to be honest, I don't want it to happen because I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. But anyway, I saw that and it was kind of interesting. And then the very next week, I saw this guy on the same channel.
So 3 years ago, I'm laying on my bed and reading 2 Thessalonians, about the gathering of the saints. And I just asked a rhetorical question, and I never said, Lord, when are you coming? When are you coming, Lord? Because I knew better. He just said, he's coming when he's coming. And it was a rhetorical question. And I said, Lord, when you're coming for us, it's been almost 50, at that time, it was almost 50 years. And in his voice that I don't hear but every 15 or 20 years, that solid, that firm, it was like not audible, but it was in the spirit. He didn't tell me a day and he didn't tell me an hour. He told me a season. He goes, you'll be 66 years old. And when he said that, my spirit began to tremble with fear, joy, ecstasy, everything. Because when the Lord speaks to you, and especially something like that, and just tears about, I said, Lord, why would you share that with me? He said, I came to you when you were a teenager, when you were young. And I'm like, why wouldn't I? And so that was 3 years ago. So all that to say this, I'm 66 as of May 20th this year. So
you get this one witness claiming that Jesus told him there's going to be no World Cup in 2026 because it's going to be too chaotic he's coming back and taking the church out of the world in September of 25, in 2 months. And then a week later, this guy calls in and says, 3 years ago, the Lord told me he's coming back when I'm 66. He turned 66 in May. So after those two, I'm getting a little freaked out. And then the following Sunday, we had a guest speaker. His name's Rex Crane. And Rex is known for kind of having prophetic messages and that sort of thing. And he's been very accurate in the past. And he wasn't talking about this. He had kind of a different subject. But he said something really weird. This is June 29th. He said, Wednesday, I had this kind of idea, this word, that we're entering a season of transition, a season of pivoting for the church. And it's the next 90 days. And he kept saying the phrase 90 days probably a dozen times over the course of his message. 90 days, 90 days, 90 days. Well, what was weird is 90 days from, he said he got the word on Wednesday. Wednesday was June 25th. 90 days from June 25th is September 23rd, which is Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, which is where this guy Joshua from South Africa said that it was going to happen. So now you got 3 people in a row claiming that, that hundreds of millions of people are going to disappear September 23rd or 24th this year, in one way or another. And then I was thinking about those pictures again of Bridgie's dreams and visions. And it would kind of make sense that the first one, the harvest is ready. The second one, the wheat taken out of the field, is, I guess, the rapture, where the church is taken out of the world. And in fact, even Jesus uses in some of his parables, when he says, like, separate the wheat from the chaff, the wheat is people who follow him. But a section is left. And what is that section? Well, if you're not in the group that leaves, let's suppose this thing happens, right? If you're not in the group that leaves, all is not lost. There's still hope. You can become part of God's church in the next, 7 years. But then it gets taken up to heaven in a red ribbon. What does the red ribbon represent? I think it represents blood, because in order to be Christian in this coming time period, you're going to have to resist whatever global government there is and world leader and that sort of thing. And it's going to be dangerous to do that. Kind of like it's dangerous to be Christian in Iran or Pakistan or Saudi or someplace like that. So, where does that leave us? Honestly, if you put a gun to my head and said, do we wake up on September 25th and everything's fine or not? And you have to bet everything you own. I'd probably say, yeah, it doesn't happen. Everything's going to be fine. We carry on as normal and live our lives. But what if it does? What if it does happen? Can we imagine what the sort of impact and repercussions would be of such an event? I mean, just imagine it for a second, even if you assign a very low probability to it. Not every country is going to be hit the same. First of all, not every professing Christian is going to be in this group that leaves. There are going to be a lot of people left behind, and only true disciples are going to be gone. And so there are going to be a lot of people saying, well, it couldn't be this rapture thing, because look, I'm here. And that's going to be a mistake. And I think a lot of people are going to fall for that. The explanation given probably will have something to do with, I don't know, extraterrestrials or something like that. All of the recent, focus on UAPs perhaps is a preamble. But not every country is going to be hit equally. Think about a place like the United States will be hit a lot harder than a place like Pakistan. The 2 hardest hit countries will be the United States and China. A lot of people are surprised to learn that China has 300 million Christians. It's about 20% of the population, even though the government doesn't like to admit that. So, we saw what happened in COVID when 4 million people were out of work and what that did to the economy. Imagine 10, 20 times that or more. And not every sector will be hit proportionately. It'll come disproportionately for things like farming, trucking. Probably up to half the military is going to be gone all at once. what is that going to do to the country? What is that going to do to the world? So, yeah, a nice happy video, huh? Again, I hope it doesn't happen. Probably won't. But if you were going to go get LASIK and the doctor said, there's a 10% chance you can go blind, would you do it? Yeah, I definitely would not. Sometimes when the stakes are so high, even a small probability uh, means that you have to take it seriously, I suppose. Now, my Jewish friends must be thinking by now, this guy's gone completely Meshuggah, and I don't blame you. But let me just close with this. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. And if you think about it, a lot of us are doing just that. I've interviewed over 5,000 people in the last 17 years, and I observe a lot of unexamined lives. We live lives of busyness. It's a world of high distraction, and it's a whirlwind, particularly once you have kids. And then you sort of live when you're young for yourself and establishing yourself. Then you live for your kids for 20 years, and then you live through your grandkids, and then we're old and we die. And where's the contemplation? Where's the pondering? Where's the examination? Where's the searching of the deep questions? And so I guess what I'm encouraging is maybe some time to do that. And I'll leave you with 3 ideas just to think about, and hopefully you'd accept my invitation to be maybe a sounding board as you go through this process and just talk about some ideas over the next couple of months. Even if nothing happens, it would just be good to do. One is that if you study the Torah carefully and you start to add up how much space Hashem dedicates to Kippur, to atonement, to the central concept of the whole Torah, and that it is provided through blood sacrifice, and realize that this is not 500 or so years before Solomon, before the temple. And so after this, before and after the temple, it doesn't seem like God changes. And so this central idea doesn't really change. And so why are we not doing that anymore? The second question to think about is, we could debate messianic prophecy all day long, but everyone knows the Mashiach was supposed to bring knowledge and worship of Hashem to the nations, to the Goyim. And right now, there's 197 nations in the UN, and all of them, 100% of them, have at least one person in them who is not a constituent, who's not Jewish, but yet worships the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I just say, that's not a false Messiah. But if there's another explanation, I'm open to it. Finally, there's about a 50-year body of evidence now in the medical literature, data on what are called near-death experiences, where people die and come back, allegedly. And it's so vast that, there are books written about it. Even, you'd think rather skeptical academic organizations like the New York Academy of Sciences, they're forced to admit something happens. We don't know what, but the self does not die. And it's interesting because if you examine, how many times religious figures are mentioned in these near-death experiences, all religious figures combined is less than 1%. But there's one that's 20 times that, or actually more than 20 times that. And I'll give you a hint, it's not Simon Bar Kokhba. So that's another curious thing we have to figure out. But these are things I would just hope we could talk about together. And if not, that's totally cool. But thanks for listening, and may God richly bless you.